The stars once called to Earth, shining with promise and mystery. For years, humans had reached for them, sending ships, signals, and science into space. They built faster ships and stronger alliances. They wanted a place among the great civilizations of the galaxy. They believed they had earned it. They waited. But no answer came. And then it did. A message arrived from the Galactic Concord. Cold, clear, and final, Earth was rejected. Humanity was not ready. They were too emotional, too divided, too dangerous. The message came without warning and without room for discussion. Earth was told to stop trying. They were to remain in their part of the galaxy alone. President Elaine Morgan stood before the world, reading the message aloud. Her voice did not shake, but her heart burned. Around her, the leaders of Earth sat in silence. Military generals, scientists, diplomats, all of them had hoped for something greater. All of them had been preparing for a future that no longer existed. In a war room deep underground, Admiral Jacob Price watched the broadcast with a hard expression. He had served in space since he was young. He had seen planets and stars up close. He had believed in peace, but now he saw the truth. The galaxy did not want peace with humans. It wanted to forget them. But before the anger could turn into action, another signal came. This one was not from the Concord. It was broken, full of static, and filled with fear. Cry for help. A distant human colony was under attack. Their leaders were gone. Their people were dying. They begged for anyone to come. The signal ended before its location was clear. It was old, from the edge of the known galaxy, a place Earth had once explored, then lost contact with. No one else answered. Not the Concord. Not any other world. Only Earth had heard it. President Morgan met with her council. Some said they should focus on their own problems. Others said they had a duty. Admiral Price spoke last. He said if humanity wanted to prove its worth, this was the way. Not with words, but with action. For approval, but because it was right. The vote was made. Earth would answer the call. Captain Laura Bennett was chosen to lead the mission. She was young but tested in fire. She had flown rescue missions during the last colony wars. She had never left anyone behind. Now she was asked to go farther than anyone in years. To a place no map could show. To people who might already be gone. Her ship, the Horizon Blade, launched into the stars. She did not go alone. With her were engineers, doctors, soldiers, and scouts. They were volunteers. Every one of them had seen the message from the Concord. Every one of them had made the same choice. As the stars slipped by, Laura stood in the command room. Her crew moved around her, checking systems and running scans. But she watched the darkness beyond the glass. She wondered what they would find. She wondered if they were too late. Back on Earth, the people waited. News spread fast. Some were afraid, some were angry, but many stood tall. They had been rejected by the stars. But they would not turn their backs on others. If the stars had no place for humans, then humans would make one with their own hands. The journey had begun. No one could stop it now. The Horizon Blade reached the edge of the galaxy after many long weeks in deep space. The crew had grown quiet. The stars looked different here. The darkness felt heavier. Signals were weak. Maps no longer helped. But Captain Laura Bennett stayed calm. She believed they were close. At last they found signs of life. A planet, broken and burning, appeared on their screens. Fires spread across the land. Smoke rose into space. Many cities were gone. Others were barely standing. The signal had come from this place. Laura gave the order to land. As the ship touched the ground, they saw people below. Weak, tired, and hurt. Most were hiding in old buildings and underground shelters. Their clothes were torn, and their eyes full of fear. But they were alive. One woman stood tall among them. She wore cracked armor and carried a long rifle. Her name was Queen Meredith Hale, once a leader of millions, now the last hope of a dying world. She had refused to run when the fighting started. She stayed with her people and fought beside them. Laura stepped forward and spoke to her. The Queen did not ask for pity. She asked for help. Her soldiers were gone. Her weapons were few, but she would not give up. Laura saw strength in her eyes. The crew of the Horizon Blade got to work. Doctors treated the wounded. Engineers fixed water systems and power lines. Soldiers guarded the shelters. For the first time in months, The people felt safe. At night, Laura and Meredith sat by a small fire. They shared stories of Earth and the stars. Meredith spoke of the early days before the attack. Her world had trusted the larger powers. They believed they were protected. But when the enemy came, no one came to help, except now. Laura promised her that Earth would not turn away. She had no orders to bring Meredith home. She was here to fight. And she would stay until the job was done. The next day, scouts brought news. Enemy forces were moving again. They had seen the ship land. They were coming back. Laura looked at her crew, did not flinch. Queen Meredith raised her rifle. The war was not over. It was just beginning. News of the enemy's return spread fast. People in the shelters prepared to hide again, but Captain Laura Bennett had other plans. She stood before them and spoke clearly. They would not run. They would stand and fight. Queen Meredith Hale agreed. She had fought for too long to give up now. She gathered the few soldiers she had left. Most of them were wounded, but their eyes still held fire. Farmers, builders, and even children offered to help. No one wanted to live in fear anymore. Laura sent a message back to Earth. She asked for backup and supplies. But she knew it would take time. They had to hold the line alone. The crew of the Horizon Blade moved fast. They built barriers with old metal and broken machines. The engineers set traps across the roads. Soldiers trained the locals to shoot and fight. Queen Meredith stood at the front with her rifle, never resting. At night, they heard the sounds of engines in the sky. The enemy was near. Laura watched from a hill with her scout, Logan. He was young but smart. He used a long scope to track movement. He pointed to the trees far ahead. Lights were coming. Laura gave the order. Everyone got into position. The town was quiet. The fires were low. People held their breath, and the attack began. The enemy came fast, riding machines and firing weapons. But the traps worked. Explosions filled the air. Walls held strong. Fighters of Earth and the broken world stood side by side. Laura moved through the fight like lightning. Her rifle was steady, her voice clear. Queen Meredith fought with honor. Her aim was sharp. She helped the wounded and shouted orders. Her people followed her without fear. The battle lasted all night. When the sun rose, smoke covered the fields. Bodies lay still. But the town still stood. The people were tired, bloody, and hurt. But they had won. Laura walked through the ruined streets. She saw children helping to carry water. She saw old men lifting broken wood. No one cried. No one begged. They had become soldiers. And Queen Meredith stood on the steps of the town hall. Oh, she looked at Laura and nodded. They had taken the first step together. Many more would follow. The days after the battle were quiet, but no one rested. Captain Laura Bennett knew the enemy would return stronger. The town had survived, but it was not safe yet. She and her crew began building again. Stronger walls, better weapons, and safer shelters. Queen Meredith Hale worked beside them. She no longer wore her crown. She wore armor and dirt, same as everyone else. People followed her not because of her title, but because she never gave up. She ate with the fighters, helped carry supplies, and watched the skies every night. Laura got a message from Earth. General Aaron Cole had received her call. A new force was being made, called the Warborn Legion. Thousands had joined. Ships would come soon, but it would take time. Till then, she was on her own. More people came out of hiding. Small groups from nearby towns arrived, carrying wounded and scared children. They had seen the battle and heard that someone had come from Earth. They asked for help. They had nothing to give. Laura took them in anyway. The fighters trained harder. They learned to work together. Logan led a small team of scouts. They searched the forests and hills for signs of danger. Each day, they brought back news. One day, they found something important. A hidden place, deep in the mountains. Inside, there were old weapons, tanks, and energy cells. Forgotten after the first attacks, Laura led a group to bring it all back. It was not easy. The roads were broken. They faced traps and wild animals, but they made it. With the new supplies, they built new machines. The town became a stronghold. Queen Meredith stood on the wall each night, watching the horizon. She knew the real fight had not come yet. Then the signal came. Logan picked it up first. A large enemy force was moving toward them, bigger than before. Hundreds of machines, heavy weapons. It was not just an attack. It was an army. Laura called her crew and the fighters. She spoke clearly. They would not run. They would hold the line again. This was not just a town anymore. It was the heart of the new war. And it would not fall. The sky turned red as the enemy army came closer. Smoke rose in the distance. The sound of engines shook the ground. People in the town stood ready, weapons in hand. Captain Laura Bennett walked through the lines, checking every station. Her voice was calm, her steps steady. Queen Meredith Hale stood beside her. She wore her full armor now, polished and marked with battle scars. Her people watched her. They trusted her. She had never left their side. Scouts came running from the hills. Logan spoke first. The enemy had split into 3 groups. One would strike the north wall. Another would hit the main gate. The third would come from the forest behind the town. Laura nodded. They had planned for this. She gave quick orders. Logan and his team would defend the forest path. Queen Meredith would hold the main gate. Laura would take the north wall. Every fighter knew their role. When the first shot came, the town did not panic. They answered with fire. The battle began with a roar. Dust and smoke covered the streets. Guns fired from windows and rooftops. Explosions lit the sky. The main gate. Queen Meredith fought like a storm. Her rifle never missed. She moved fast, shouting to her soldiers, helping the wounded and holding the line. At her side were young boys and old men, all fighting with full hearts. Laura held the north wall with her crew. The enemy pushed hard, using heavy machines and fire, but the wall was strong. Laura used a long-range rifle. She picked off targets one by one. Her voice came through the radio, clear and strong. In the forest, Logan's team waited in silence. When the enemy stepped into the trees, traps exploded. Fighters jumped from the shadows. Blades and fire filled the night. Logan fought with speed and skill, never backing down. The battle lasted for hours. Bodies covered the ground. The town shook with fire and noise. But the enemy could not break the defense. When the sun rose, the smoke cleared. The town still stood. Tired fighters dropped to their knees. Many were hurt, some had fallen. But they had won again. Queen Meredith stood at the gate, her armor cracked, her hands bloody. Laura climbed down from the wall. The 2 leaders met in the square. They said nothing, they only nodded, and got ready for the next fight. The fires still burned from the last battle, but there was no time to rest. Captain Laura Bennett knew the next wave would be worse. She walked through the town with a hard look on her face. Fighters cleaned weapons. Engineers fixed walls. Doctors moved fast to save the wounded. No one asked for a break. Queen Meredith Hale stood at the edge of the hill with her soldiers. Her armor was damaged, but she did not take it off. Wanted the people to see her standing. She had become more than a queen. She was now a symbol of strength. Logan and his scouts brought news. A large enemy base had been found beyond the valley. It was hidden deep underground, protected by energy fields and walls. It was where the enemy sent orders and supplies. If they could take it out, they could break the enemy's chain. Laura called for a council meeting. She stood in the old town hall with her crew, Queen Meredith, and the local fighters. She pointed at a map. The plan was clear. They would strike the enemy base before the next attack came. It was the only way to survive. It would not be easy. The road was full of traps. The air was watched by drones, but no one stepped back. They were tired of waiting for death. Now, they would bring the fight. That night, the strike team left the town. Laura led the mission. Meredith rode beside her. Logan guided them through the hills. They moved fast and quiet. No fires, no lights. Only the sound of wind and footsteps. By morning, they reached the edge of the base. It was larger than they thought. High walls, big gates, guards everywhere, but they had come too far to stop. Laura gave the signal. Explosions rocked the gate. Fighters rushed in. Smoke and fire filled the air. Inside the base, chaos broke out. Laura's team moved with speed. They used every trick they knew. Queen Meredith fought in the front line. Her blade flashed in the firelight. Her voice rose above the noise, giving orders and lifting the spirits of those around her. After hours of battle, the enemy command center was destroyed. Supplies burned. Walls fell. The base was lost. They had won again. But they knew the enemy would come back harder. This was not the end. It was only the start of a bigger war. Smoke still rose from the broken enemy base. Fighters stood in silence, tired and dirty, but proud. Captain Laura Bennett looked across the valley. She knew the fight was not over. This was only a small victory. The real enemy was still out there, gathering more forces. Queen Meredith Hale stood beside her. Her armor was cracked, her face marked with dust and blood. But her eyes were sharp. She had become the voice of the broken worlds. Her people followed her without fear now. They had seen her fight, lead, and never give up. A signal came from Earth. General Aaron Cole spoke through the radio. The Warborn Legion was ready. Ships had launched from Earth. Thousands of fighters were on the way. They would arrive in a few days. The galaxy had seen what the people of Earth had done. Other broken worlds were rising too. They were choosing to fight. Laura passed the message to the town. People cheered, but they knew what still had to be done. The enemy would strike again before help arrived. They had seen their base fall. It would come with everything they had left. The town was turned into a stronghold. Walls were rebuilt with the enemy's own metal. New weapons were placed on the rooftops. Fighters trained night and day. Children carried food and water. Even the old helped build. Queen Meredith called for leaders from nearby towns. They came on foot, on bikes, in old trucks. They stood in the hall where dust still covered the floor. She told them they were not waiting anymore. They were not weak. They were not forgotten. They were now part of something greater. The last battle came 2 nights later. The sky was black with smoke. Fire lit the fields. Machines rolled in from every side. But this time, the fighters did not hide. They stood tall. The town fought back with strength and fire. Earth's flag flew beside the banners of the other worlds. When the sun rose, the enemy was gone. The town still stood. The people were bruised, bleeding, and tired. But they had won. Earth had been rejected by the stars. But they did not wait for a welcome. They fought. They led. They saved. And now the galaxy followed them.